All right, so welcome back to the mathematics section of the Civil FE exam review. In this video, we're going to be looking at statistics, and that can include anything from distributions, mean, median, mode, standard deviation, confidence intervals, regression, and curve and fitting. So I'm really just reading this off of what the NCEES tells us that could be on our exam. Right? So let's go ahead and dive in to this, to number one. All right, so number one says, so you want to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Dallas, Texas next year. The mean monthly rent for a random sample of 60 apartments advertised on apartments.com is $1,000. Assume a population standard deviation of $200. Construct a 95% confidence interval. All right. So, let's take a look at what we're given first and foremost. So we are given the mean which is $1,000. We're also given the number of apartments, which is 60. We're given the standard deviation, just gonna put SD, that is $200. And so those are all the givens. What are we trying to find? We're trying to find the 95% confidence interval. All right. Okay, so what is a confidence interval? So basically a confidence interval is a range. And so that's what we're trying to find, that, and we're trying to find or be 95% confident that an apartment within this sample is going to range pretty much near the $1,000 mark, plus or minus 200, right? Or the standard deviation could be anywhere from, $200 off from that mean. So what we want to do is determine those boundaries, right? And so how do we start this problem, right? So I don't know too much about confidence intervals. So normally when I don't know something, I try to find some formulas that involve it. So I'm just going to do a control search and do confidence interval. All right, one thing comes up. So one thing that you want to note, okay, so this is the first thing that comes up is a confidence interval for intercept. So this is kind of confusing, all right? A lot of symbols, all right? And you need to know those symbols. So it'd be nice if they told me what those symbols meant. So we got A. So I start to look at my variables, right? And see what I'm given, the information that I'm given. N is going to be my number of samples, which is 60. SXX. What's MSE? Sometimes you'll have to scroll up to see what some of this stuff even means, right? So based on them not even sharing with me what any of that means. Okay. So I think I'm getting a little bit warmer, right? This one says, this, I'm gonna type in confidence interval, sample distributions, confidence interval for mean of a normal distribution. So I do know that the standard deviation is known. And so X bar represents my mean. And then Z alpha divided by 2, I don't know what that is. This symbol represents the standard deviation. And then N is the number of samples. So basically, it seems like I have a good amount of variables that I can work with, right? And so this is why being able to navigate through this, is going to be super important, and understanding what is what. Okay. So I don't know what Z alpha divided by 2 is here. So can I determine that? Well, because I know I'm very familiar with this chart and this manual. So Z alpha corresponds to the appropriate probability under the normal probability curve for given Z variable. So what is Z variable? Well, Z variable is the 95%. So you got an 80% confidence interval. And so we're going to be looking at this 95% confidence interval. So we need to use Z alpha divided by 2 is equal to 1.96. That's the value we need for that. So if you didn't know what some of this stuff, these symbols mean, all right, here's a perfect place to go to start seeing some of this stuff. So Z variable is the standard normal Z score. Test statistic, this symbol stands for standard deviation. Your population mean, your hypothesized mean, right? That X bar that we saw. N is the sample size. So once we go back to our one, then what are our bounds, right? What are our bounds? So we have X bar, which is equal to the mean, which is equal to 1,000. We have standard deviation, which is equal to what is our standard deviation? 200. And then for variables, we have our Z A divided by 2, that's 1.96. And our N is equal to 60. All right. So now we can find the lower bound of this amount of rent, or price of rent. So let's solve. So X bar minus Z times the mean over the square root of n, which equals 2. And this is our lower bound. So we're saying our mean, which is 1,000, minus the 1.96 times 200 divided by the square root of 60. And you should get, for that, 949.39. Okay. And so that's our lower bound. So we're 95% sure that our rent, we're 95% confident that our rent will be between $949 and our upper bound is going to be here, since we know our standard deviation is going to be the same thing, but it's going to be plus. So x bar plus z alpha divided by 2 times standard deviation over the square root of n. And that's going to equal 1,000 plus 1.96 times 200 divided by the square root of 60. And that is going to give us 1050.61. 1050.6. Right. So our answer is going to be A. And for saving time purposes, if you get one of the bounds and it matches up, then you don't have to solve for that upper bound, because especially if it's not the same, because if we would have saw that it was 949, right, we could have got rid of B, C, and D from this. So hopefully this made sense. A lot of this is just making sure that you understand what certain symbols mean. So reading your manual is going to be key for you. So like X bar meant your mean. Finding the table where Z alpha divided by 2 is for 95% confidence interval. Plugging in your standard deviation, knowing your N, and knowing when to use certain, formulas. So hopefully this was helpful. Let's look at number 2. All right. So number 2 says, find the mean for the following data. All right, I'm given data. I'm asked to find the mean. Formulas needed? None. You need some prior knowledge. Hopefully you do know how to calculate the mean. It's just the values added up divided by the total number of values. So we'll look at this. But basically, it's just taking your 10 plus your 12 plus your 8 plus 14 plus 16, and dividing it by the number of values that you have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 values. So we're going to divide that by 5. And you should get 12 for this. Pretty easy. Great. All right. Let's look at number 3. All right. Given the mean is 12, right? Find the variance for the following data, right? 10, 12, 8, 14, and 16. So I left the information that we needed, but basically you're given the data, you're given the number of samples. So the data would be here. The number of samples is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Number of samples is 5. And the mean is 12, right? What are we trying to find? We're trying to find the variance. Just find the variance. How would we find the variance? All right. Well, the variance for a population would be solved in this way. So variance is equal to standard deviation squared, or is equal to 1 over n times, what does this x stand for, right? Well, this x1 stands for the mean, the value number 1 minus your mean, right? And if you need if you need help with it, it says the variance of the population is the arithmetic a mean of the square deviations from the population mean. All right. If mu is the mean of a discrete population, n is the size, and the population variance is defined by this. So basically, you need to take 1 over the number of samples. So we'll just start there. So variance is equal to 1 over n, or just go ahead and write it out. What is n? N is 5. 1 over 5 times brackets. What's my x1? Is 10. It's the first value. Minus my mean, 12. And then square that. Plus, what's my x2? 12 minus 12, right? My second value was 12, and I'm subtracting 12, and then I'm squaring it. Plus 8 minus 12 squared. I'm going to come down here. That way I don't run out of room. And I'm going to say plus 14 minus 12 squared. Okay. And then plus 16 minus 12 squared. And this will give us a value which equals 8. So 8 is your variance. Now, if I took the square root, so it's important to note, if you take the square root of this value, then that is your standard deviation. So variance is always a standard deviation squared. So 8 would be our answer. That can be a little tricky, but all right. So this concludes the mathematics portion of the Civil FE exam review. In the next section, we're gonna go through ethics and professional practice, which is pretty easy. But hopefully this gives you a glimpse of what some of these problems can look like, and just as long as you understand what symbols represent, stuff is pretty easy as well. So